Hello guys, it's been a couple of weeks since I posted a video about my coil unwinder, so I thought I'd make a little video to show you about what I'm doing. Right now I'm unwinding some coils from when the coils were on the big machine, on the big coil unwinder, they were so bollocksed up that I had to tend them. So I did some really rough coils. Here I've got one of my axles screwed on to the center bolt of the system. It really doesn't turn, it's just this guy here turns. But right now the way I've got it going is the wire comes down through that guy there. I found that the wire wandered too much, but I found that if I just put a couple of big wrenches over the cap nuts that I use on my axles, that those provide wire guides. There's a switch I installed. I wired up the motor so that I have several switches that I can push to stop the motor, and I also integrated what I'm going to call my tension fuse. But the wire comes down through that little guy there, and he's just a couple of rollers, comes up to here, and then comes up and around a pulley. Now this pulley is tied with a couple of carabiners to a wire that comes up here, and if I pull too much, that wire comes apart, and then I can put it back together, and it just is just a couple little spade length, a spade, male and female spade from an automobile set that I made work very lightly. But when that comes apart, the motor stops. I've got it with a couple of different sets of springs here. These are springs that I took out of monitors, and two springs I found are strong enough to handle the big wires. And then for the 30 gauge wire, I just put 4 springs in a row, and they make it so that the 30 gauge and stuff like that, if it gets hooked up or anything gets crazy, it pulls that, and that's my tension fuse. And it just comes up then to another carabiner here, and then up onto the top of the winder thing. So that's my tension fuse. I put that in so that I didn't have to worry about breaking wires, and then the wire comes down and through this guy right here. Once again, I've put a wrench on here, hooked it around the top here to act as a guide, comes into my tensioning tower, comes down and over my length roller. There's a little kit I put together to make a power supply so that I don't have to put batteries in the length roller. If I were going to do it over again, I would probably put in the mechanical wheel, because the mechanical wheel doesn't care about power and doesn't care what it's doing, and it just reads and reads and reads, and as long as you reset the mechanical wheel at the start of each wind, you don't have to worry about it. This one here, if the tension fuse breaks and the wire, and I have to take more than 15-20 seconds to reset it, this guy here, to protect its batteries that it thinks it's got, turns off. Yuck. Okay, then the wire comes down. I still haven't built a serving mechanism, so right now I'm just feeding the wire through a hole, and then it comes on to a spool that's on a spindle. Now, a couple of other things I've added. One, I've added a speed control knob there, so that with my left hand, as I'm managing the wire with my right hand, I can change the speed. And then up here I have a master switch. This guy right here is master on off. And then I have a start stop that's lighted, and then a directional button here, a directional switch here. I'm powering everything with a Dell computer power supply. I also have a little 12-volt battery hooked into the thing. And then right there, right here, is a Velemon kit that is a motor control. Now I've got things hooked up with a couple of relays. I have a relay here that's hooked in to this switch so that if my fuse blows or I push a switch back there, it'll turn the motor off instantly. I left the battery hooked in so that anytime the main power is on, the battery's getting charged off the computer supply. I found that when I turned it off, the battery was still backfeeding, so I added another relay here that I feed that relay off the -12 of the battery of the computer supply that takes the battery in and out of the circuit. That way, as soon as I turn off the switch, the -12 goes away, and -12 to ground is just the same as +12 to ground as far as the relay is concerned. Since the battery doesn't produce -12, when the -12 goes bye-bye, that relay turns off and that disconnects the battery from the circuit so that the whole thing goes dead. Here I have my Velemon counter kit that I put together. The little PC board you sit there contains a little set reset latch using a 4001 integrated circuit. I got the circuit diagram from that out of a Radio Shack electronics lab. I went down to the local junkyard and got myself several more of the motors because I managed to burn out a few of them when I was doing my 24 gauge winds. The motors have on them inside there a little mechanism where there's three different rails, three different rings. One ring is in contact with the center most of the time, and then another ring is in the contact with the center only a little bit of the time. As they come from the factory, the ground is tied to the case of the motor, which in the case of my little machine here with my pulse width modulation motor thing, the case is running at -28 volts, I found. Not a real good thing for feeding digital signals. So I took them apart and figured out how to disconnect that ring and all those things from the case. And so I feed 5 volts into the center thing, and then one side feeds the set portion of my latch, and then when the one that's just the momentary contact comes around, that unsets my latch and produces a pulse that then the Velemon counter, a 5-volt pulse, the Velemon counter can count. So I'm really counting rotations of the motor, and I'm putting the bobbin there on pretty tight to the motor, because my tension fuse takes care of anything if anything gets hung up in the system. I've so far wound about 84 24-25 gauge spools, and right now I'm working on getting the 30 and 30 gauge spools done, and I brought about, each one of those is running long enough to do 2 Bedini coils, I think. I'm getting somewhere between 1900 and 2000 turns out of each coil that I've unwound of the 30 gauge. I'm about halfway through them. I've still got a whole bunch more out in the garage, but right now I'm out here in the kitchen because the kitchen is warm and the garage is not. But I just thought you'd want to get a feel for what I've been doing and how I've been doing things. I had enough things that wanted ground that I installed a ground bus here, and just everything that needs a ground ties into that ground bus. And then back there on top of the battery I put a 12-volt bus for all the things that need 12 volt. And what more can I say? My coil unwinder currently has me hand feeding coils onto the bobbin, and with that being said, I'll turn on the line counter, clear it out, The counter here is clear. Put a hand there. Well, I'm going to put this on my knee, hopefully, and turn it on, and off we go to the races and winding a new coil. And now I'm going to stop it and pretty up that coil. But just in the time we were sitting there, it got 16 turns and 3 feet came down. So that's my little thing. I'm now over 10 minutes on this video, but a couple of new things going on here. First of all, I've integrated in a 12-volt power supply and put in a master power switch. Added a motor slow. Let me show you how that works. The motor's going fast, and when I turn this down, I can slow that motor right down to where it's just crawling. In fact, I can actually stop it. But I can slow that guy down, or I can put him back up to really going fast just with this little guy. And then back here, I have this switch that's lit up. As soon as I push that, that stops it. Push it back in, it's going. If we get an overtension that occurs, there we go, it stopped, the overtension is gone, the lights are still on. I've got to get a bulb for this thing here. The idea being I come back here, take care of whatever caused the tension, push that switch, then put the tension fuse back together, then push this little button here, it comes on, and then wire goes through, and everybody's working and rolling, and on and off we go. And so right now here on the little counter, I've got a little LED lit in there that it lights up one color when it's on the one side, and then when it pulses, you can see it pulse, and you can see the counters just going right up. Life is good, and the coil's getting wound. Thank you for watching. This is Ogre Owner signing off.